At this time, I'd like to introduce Mario Leclerc from Paycheck Nutrition. He was a co-founder of the company in '97, so they've been in business for over 25 years, serving 60 plus farms in Eastern Ontario for their nutritional needs. You spoke at Kevin Jones's meeting in Midland 4 years ago, and it was a really enjoyable presentation. We're very glad to have you back. The floor is yours.
Thank you. All right, it's always the toughest speaker to be right after lunch, so we'll see how it goes. Thanks for coming. Can you hear me well? Yes, good.
Mario?
Yes.
If I put my hand up, that means that air vent is on, you gotta speak louder.
All right, I'll try.
It's not on now.
Okay.
It's not on now.
So,
I just give you the sign.
okay, but I may think it's a question.
Well, no, I don't have any questions.
Yeah. That's not what you do when you're one-on-one. Okay, cool. So thanks for inviting me again. Usually the further you're away from home, the smarter you are. So it's going to be tough because I'm close from here. This is my area. I live in Castleman, so it's about 25 minutes from here. And thanks for coming. I do recognize some face, but I hope you enjoy. Now, when Theo called me and says, you need to talk about this, that, and that, and he talked forever, and I says, okay, what do you really want? Oh, no, just, you'll come up with something. So it's okay. So I'm going to be repeating some of the stuff we've heard from Mr. Reike on the SNF ratio. But to make sure I receive tomatoes, I did put two farms next to each other. One is a Jersey farm and one is a Holstein farm. So now we can really debate on this, and we'll go from there. So I hope you enjoy. Paycheck. So you saw the title. You knew we were going to talk about paycheck. So who brought their paycheck today? There you go. So in the past I used to say that, but now we have it on our phone. So I invite, now DFO, they do have a time on your phone that after a while it will get off. But I do invite to have your phone ready with your paycheck to compare your numbers. My point that I was saying in the past, and I still do, is why do you hide your paycheck? It should be on the table. It should be right here on the table in this meeting to compare with others. And there's no real taboo looking at your paycheck. And if I ask in the crowd, do you really understand your paycheck? Most people will say yes. But on one-on-one, when we do ask typical questions on the paycheck, well, I was not certain. I thought it was this way or that way. Well, you're getting paid on your kilograms of fat, and you have an amount of fat that you're allowed to produce. It's sad to see when we don't produce it because we don't understand it well. So margin has been squeezed. It's been tougher to make a dollar. Let's maximize our paycheck. And I'm trying to give some example and explain that paycheck. And I don't work for DFO, by the way, but part is close. So what is solid non-fat? And I'm going to be basic, but solid non-fat has nothing to do with fat. So it's all the solids without the fat. So it's a quick calculation of your protein and other solids. As an example, as a Jersey farm, I've put 3.85 plus 6% other solids. That equals 9.9. So the 9.9 is the SNF. Not the 2.1, the 2.0. That's a ratio. The SNF is solid non-fat. So everything that is non-fat, in your case for Jersey, you're close to 10, and that's your SNF. When we talk about a ratio is when we take that 9.9 and then divide by the fat. In this example, I've used 5.2%, and that will give you the SNF ratio. So there's a difference between SNF and SNF ratio. So the number on your paycheck, the number that Mr. Reike presented was the ratio, not the SNF. Is that clear? That's simple? All right. So if I want to compare a Holstein farm to a Jersey farm, they do have the same calculation, but you can see this 9.2 here. The Jersey farm is closer to a 9.9. So actually, you're making more SNF than a Holstein farm. Because in this calculation, if I take 3.2% protein plus 6% other solids, that's just 9.2. So, yeah, we can say, oh, those bad Holstein herds, they're producing a lot of SNF. Well, Jersey too. The difference is they're producing less fat to divide that SNF. In this case here, I'm going to use a 4.1% fat. That's a SNF ratio of 2.24 versus the 9.9 divided by 5.2 equals 1.89. It's nice. We've talked about being under 2. And on the Paycheck, you have a graph at the bottom that helps to, it used to be the graph according to your quota. Personally, I prefer the graph with your quota. So you can see if you're over or under your quota. Now it's a graph according to SNF ratio. Personally, I wish the quota one would be back. I'm just passing my message. Because the SNF ratio doesn't really give us a lot of information to have a graph there. What's important is how the numbers have dropped since 2019. It was 2.35 in Ontario for 2019, and then it dropped and dropped and dropped, and now we're back to that 2.2 since February. And the graph is just telling you if you're over or under, my opinion. All right, so let's compare two farms. Option A, you can pretty guess that that's a Holstein farm, and then option B, I've used 5.2. Now, I've read the article that was in the local paper about Mr. Ed Cooper. I think, were you at Cooper yesterday? So, in the article, they were talking up to 5.5% fat. In this example, I could have put 5.5, but then I would need to put maybe 4.4% Holstein. We do have some herd right now at this time of the year producing 4.3% fat. We have even some herd up to 4.4% fat, but that's not your average. That's your highest peak of the year. So 5.5 I feel would be something similar, and it goes by the amount of volume of milk as well. So if a Jersey herd is producing a lot of milk per cow, their fat will probably be closer to 5.1. If they are producing less milk as a volume or higher days in milk, the fat will probably go to 5.5. So in this two farms that I'm comparing, you can see those two ratios. And when I built the presentation around January, the numbers were still 2.25. So there's a few corrections that needs to be done, but not that much for this example because it's not way over. And when you look at your Paycheck, what are you looking at? Are you looking at dollar per hectoliter? Who's looking at dollar per hectoliter? And do you know your dollar per hectoliter? $1.15. Is that good?
Better than it has been.
And is that your average?
No, it's high.
It's high. It's like on Facebook. Who's got robots? The robot herds. Yeah. And you know my joke where I'm going with this is usually it's like Facebook. We like to put a picture of our dashboard on the best day of the month, so we look really good. So same with those $1.50. What would be more an average? $1.10?
Yeah, $1.10.
$1.10, $1.12. So again, we got to be careful with averages and range. It's probably ranging from $1.05 to $1.20. So who's looking at dollar per hectoliter?
Kilo.
And who's looking at kilos, dollar per kilo? Cool. If I asked this question 10 years ago, most people would have responded dollar per hectoliter, especially the Jersey, because it will be higher and it looks pretty good. If I look at dollar per kilogram of quota, the difference was higher just 2-3 years ago on Holstein herds. Now I'm going to show in this presentation, it's almost the same. So it did change. Any questions? Oh, on questions, please ask question as you go. It's more interesting, especially for me. So don't hesitate. And I really like the one who says I disagree with you. Those are the best, okay? So feel free, I like that challenge. The only thing is I have about 6 feet here to move. So be gentle. So where is that number on your paycheck? So if you look at your paycheck, this is where the number is. I zoom it in. This paycheck was the December. Obviously, this is a Holstein herd. You can see that Holsteins are not doing $1 or $1 per liter. They're a touch under. Now, it depends on the component, obviously. I like the $1 per kilograms of fat. Who's willing to tell me how many kilos a quota they have?
110.
110? Okay. Can I use your calculator? Or you can do it for me. So you're not willing to share your paycheck with me, but 110 times $22 equal what? That's 24.20. That's $1 per day. Times 30? 30 days.
72,000.
So your paycheck is pretty close, anywhere between $70,000 and $75,000 a month. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to calculate everybody's paycheck. What is pretty hard to do is how much is left. Okay? So don't be afraid to show your paycheck, especially if you're not sure about certain things. I know, Nick, you've been involved with DFO. You're involved with DFO, so this is common stuff for you. But don't be afraid to show your paycheck, especially with your team that you trust, your consultants. All right, so we got this black and white, that is ugly cow, next to this nice, cute brown cow.
I don't disagree with you.
Of course, I had to make this presentation look good for Jersey. But in a month from now, I'm going to talk at the hosting day, and they're going to change all those numbers. All right? So what I'm going to do, to be fair, is if you want to compare two farms, don't look at the $1 per hectoliter. Look at a typical case of 100 kilos a quota on each side. We got 100 kilos a quota to fill. Is the quota cheaper for Holstein or Jersey farm to purchase?
The same.
It's the same. So is the quota one of your biggest expense on your farm?
If you could buy it.
Not anymore.
If you can buy it. But as the equity, it's got a big chunk of the equity of the farm is quota. So there's a return of at least $24,000 per kilos a quota. So that's a big number. And 100 kilos a quota, you can say, oh, I got way more quota than that. But that's an easy number to divide by 2 or multiply by 2. And in this example, with those components, we're going to use 100 kilos a quota. And to be fair, I've used a touch more volume of milk, even with a lower percentage, to fill the 100 kilos a quota. So for an Ontario Holstein farm, I've used 1.4 kilos, and as a Jersey, Ontario farm, I've used 1.3 kilos. Who do you know your kilograms produced per cow? Is that a number you would like to calculate? I'm assuming, are you 3X milking? So I'm assuming 3X milking, you're probably closer to 1.6, 1.7 kilos. Same with the Jersey farm. 3X milking would probably be at close to 1.5 kilos. So to be fair, I tried to calculate 2 farms of the same management to do this presentation. And I fixed the number on the one who did the slides. Now, if I take the amount of percent of fat, divide by 100 kilos, that will tell us how much milk we need to represent this 1.4 or 1.3. In this example, I'm using 34.1 liter on the Holstein side and 25 liters on the Jersey side. Does that make sense? Is that a fair average? Deborah? Oh, you shake your hand. You were not sure there.
No, I'm okay.
You okay? Cool. Or if you prefer, to fill 100 kilos a quota with those numbers, I need 72 Holsteins on one side, or I need 77 Jersey on the other side. Okay? Cool. So it's just a math. 5.2% to do 1.3, I need 77 cows producing 25 liters. That's your typical Jersey herd. Would that be close to Jersey, Ontario numbers as an average for the province?
Yeah.
Or this will be higher?
Not about that, please.
Okay. Would that be a 2x farm for Jerseys? Would that be a 3x number?
Decent 2x.
A good manager 2x, and I'm going to say 34.1 kilo would also be a pretty good manager 2x for Holsteins. So typical farm that we compare, and let's compare apple with apple. Let's compare two of the same management. We talked about Ed Cooper. He's the same manager now as with Jersey. He was a good Holstein farm, stuck in a small barn. Now he's a good Jersey farm. All right. And one last number, I do work with feed rations, so I did compare how much they eat. This morning you had the discussion on carbon print and stuff like that, and the Jersey are eating less, and yes, they are eating less. In this example, I've used 24.5 kilos of intake for a Holstein cow, and 19.7 kilos of intake for a Jersey. Does that make sense for the Jersey people? Yes. Yeah? Just under 20 kilos. The 3X milkers, they would go, who's 3X milking? Is there somebody 3X? So intake will go up as milk go up. So those are the number I'm using in those calculations. So if you don't like it, let me know now. If not, it's too late. So where do we see price on your paycheck? It will be on your right-hand side. You'll see your dollar per kilos of fat for the within quota. Those are new numbers that is there since January 2021. The within quota, that's a new number that's been there. So it's up to 2.0, and most Jersey farm, in this example is 1.89 as a ratio, most Jersey farm, 100% of their milk will be in that category. Compared to the other farm, the Holstein, they will have a portion of their protein and other solids that will be in the market ratio, as Mr. Reike explained before. And there's even another one, if you're over 2.2, it will go to the SNF ratio cap. Now, there was a debate this morning, should we have a penalty if the milk is over that ratio? Actually, you're gonna see there's a pretty good penalty because you get paid for transport, but you don't get reward for nothing. So it doesn't show as a minus number, but you don't want to be in that category too much. And then there's the over quota situation. That is why we buy quota. So on your paycheck, there's a within that is right on top with the price per kilo of fat. And the price per kilo of fat will vary month to month, depending on the market, depending on a lot of stuff. And that's not something we control. It's something that the board will calculate and have it different month to month to represent the market and the need. So in this example here, I did present at the Maxville and Kimville Dairy Day in 2020. Those are the prices that I had in my presentation for fat, protein, and other solids. And you can see the switch, and we're talking just to November 19. So the fat went up almost $3 per kilo. That's a big jump. And you said earlier, oh, we should not reward the farm that is over a certain amount of that ratio. Well, actually, it's already there. And you're going to see on those numbers, since 2020, the reward has changed a lot. And the protein also is up. What is down big time is the amount of other solids in that example. So those are the price inside. Now there's a price also for market ratio, and that's a November paycheck. When I did the presentation, the price of the market value of those protein and other solids that it was over to was at $3.53. I think right now it's just like $3.12, is that right? $3.20. So that number dropped. And now we just received a letter from the DFO that they're going to change even more. You talked about it 70%?
That's right.
It's going to be 70% of that $3.50? Yeah. No, sorry. It's going to be 70% of the 90 cents.
Yes, 70 of the 90, and then the protein is entire tier 2. That's 70%.
So 70% of $10. So actually those numbers won't be the same anymore.
No,
70% of the 320.
yes.
70 of the 353.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
And then the other one will be 63 cents.
Now for Jersey they don't care because you don't have any quota there. But for Nick and Holstein Farms, it's a big chunk. The thing that was strange a little bit, I understand what they did, and please correct me, is look at the dollar for other solids within quota was just 90 cents. And when you're in that ratio, it was actually paid way more for other solids. But it's because those two numbers are the same, I'm assuming.
But I assume that money goes back to the first tier, so it's not like losing everything. Is that correct, Bart?
Yeah, it goes to the first, but he has less of the first than the one that does not.
Yes. So most of the milk is here.
And that's because of the raw price, that's why those numbers are that high.
That's right. The thing that is that 90 cents is actually less than.
Yeah, the 90 cents is the set price, doesn't matter, but the protein, that depends on the world market.
That 90 cents was established to try to help those SNF ratio back in 2020, and it's been there since. Okay. All right. And then there's the SNF cap. Again, Jersey Farm don't really care about this because we don't have any milk there, but if our ratio, as it's changing, there's a fair amount. Now, out of this paycheck, when I took the picture, the SNF ratio was still 225, and my example was 224. So there was no other solids that was in that category. But you can see that the price is at zero. There's no kilos and the price is at zero. So if you produce extra protein and other solids, you're not getting paid for. So you talk, there should be a penalty. Well, you're not getting paid for work you do, so that's a penalty. I came up with an example. I did find into the paycheck that I do see. There was example here, one farm. This is what it would look like. Kilos would be added there, times 0. If I put this dollars, that farm lost about $1,100 of other solids that was not paid for because they were over that ratio. So it's not a penalty, but you're not getting paid for. And as the bar keep going down on that ratio, there's an amount that is losing there. So I can understand why there's no penalty on top.
That's a lot of money on this milk check.
On one check. And I know whose that check is, it's not even a big farm.
Well,
Okay? I'll go quick before you recognize the paycheck. Okay, cool. All right. So here's Nick's truck. And on those two farms, there's another number we didn't talk, is we talked about revenue, but there's also an expense per liter. So we talked about liter per cow, but to fill 100 kilos of quota per day, the Holstein farm need about 2,400 liters versus 1,900 liters to fill the same 100 kilos of quota per day. So there's some deduction that is done per hectoliter. Is there any talk that those dollars of deduction will go per kilos of quota instead of going per hectoliter?
Because they don't transport quotas, they transport liters.
Yes.
So you cannot put it on the better fat.
Okay. So another knock on the Holstein farm, they will need to pay more because they're shipping more liters, and the deduction, well, it goes pretty quick. It's up to about $5, $5.67 in this example. So to ship the same 100 kilos of quota, one farm is paying over $4,000 of transportation and other cost or other deduction versus $3,200. In this example here, there's $900 less on the Jersey farm to produce those two numbers, to fill the same 100 kilos of quota. Okay, but that's a discussion since day one. Oh, I have Jersey, I'm saving on my transport, I'm getting more per hectoliter. Now we need to look more at dollar per hectoliter, dollar per kilograms of quota minus the expense. In this example, the Jersey is favorable by $900 a month to fill 100 kilos of quota. And the dollar per kilograms of quota, when I did the calculation, it came to $21.57 for the within quota. Because there was some revenue for the market value, there was just 86 cents, but you still need to add it up. So this farm, if I do the math, they are having a revenue minus the deduction on the DFO of that $4,000 of $63,000. So that's less than your paycheck, but you have more quota. And then for the same 100 kilo quota is $2.38, but there's no revenue coming from the market value because 100% of the milk is inside the 2.0. So there's no extra revenue for market value, and that will give a paycheck. See, the paycheck is about the same on each side, very close. But because there's less deductions per hectoliter, if it would be a deduction per kilogram of quota, actually those two examples would be exactly the same. But because it's a deduction per hectoliter, there was, for 100 kilos of quota, there was on paycheck to paycheck, $758 difference. And the main difference is the deduction per hectoliter. Not that long ago, it was the opposite. And when you say we need to do it gradually and slowly, we've got to make sure we don't go too fast. Any questions? Am I going too fast?
Gradually.
You guys are quiet. I didn't see any dessert. Was there, the dessert was good? There was no dessert? Okay, so I thought you guys maybe had stuff your face with too much dessert. So we're going to talk about a feed program. Thanks, Doug, for the picture. You look good there. Well, I tried to cut you as much as I could, but we still recognize you. You want to say that in this? All right. So we looked at the paycheck minus deduction, but now we need to look at the intake as well. How much haylage, corn silage we need to feed those cows to still produce the same 100 kilos of quota. So I got two typical diets, not scientific, I just crushed it in there. And those cows, Jersey, are eating less kilos than Holsteins. And if we add those feed costs, I got $8.77 on one side versus $7.60 per cow per day on that side. It's pretty simple. They're eating less. Now, the biggest mistake I see out there, and on the last Jersey meeting, I was pushing you need to know your forage cost. If you put $0 for forage, then you can change the example a bit. But those forage cost a lot of money. So the bigger the cow is, times the price of those expensive forage, it adds up pretty quick. So in this example here, 72 cows, keep in mind, there's only 72 cows versus 77 cows. If I do the math of the deductions, milk check minus deductions, minus the feed cost, because that milk check is not free, you got some expense, and at least feed cost is your highest cost. If I take those costs away, now the difference is even more than $700. So I got $18, almost $19 of feed cost to feed 72 cows, and $17,500 on the 77 cows because they are smaller. So return over feed, I got 44,000 after feed paid on one side versus 46,000. So that's a difference of $2,000. That's a big number, more than I thought it would be, or definitely way more than it was in 2020. And that's without penalties on the extra SNF ratio. I think the penalty is strong enough to make the Holstein farm change a little bit their mentality, and they are trying really hard. The last 2 months, I'm checking everybody's that I work with that have access to their DFO. There was nobody under 4% fat. So it's changing, but it's changing slowly. Any questions on this? Is that too clear? Is that not enough clear? There was no question yet.
You're making us look good with that.
Better than I expected. I'm
Yeah.
still avoid when I asked you the
How's it going? So are you going to speak to an Holstein meeting?
Yeah, now I'm afraid. I probably won't be invited, sorry. Yes?
Can you go back?
Yep. Where?
Just to the price card silage. Did I see 107? Is that $170?
Of ton dry. Because to compare silages, it's pretty tough to do as fed. It all depends. Did you did it too late? Did you? So per ton of dry matter. Now
So how much is that?
do a quick calculation. If we do corn silage around 33% dry matter, divide that number by 3. That will give you your cost as fed. Or you can just multiply this cost by the dry matter. You do a lot of work with feed cost. So that's what, if we do 170 times 35% dry matter, what's that cost? Where are we? You guys have phone everywhere.
I don't think that's enough.
No, that's
I was about to ask, those are numbers that you put in there, or that's what, it's the last number I heard, and I don't know how, is $75 a ton wet, times 3 puts you at like 225 on a dry matter basis. So I feel like that number is good but low, and so I'm just wondering, where did you get those numbers from?
Yes, good question. And I should have put a note at the bottom. I've called a management group. They call it Groupement Gestion in our area. There's about 100 farms in that Groupement Gestion. And Luc Gagné, that's their accounting. That's the number they give me as an average. Now, when I was in the Jersey meeting, I did a presentation on the ranking, like on the range of cost. And it's very scary. 170, be careful with averages. That's the average of that group. But the range was from, let's say, 140 to 320. Haylage, 275 per ton of dry matter. It was from 180 to 580 cost. And so I've used their averages, but it's not rocket science. It's an average of local farmers that they share in numbers. And I've used their number, but I agree, some farms it's way more than this. And those numbers are close to custom work numbers. So if you hire a custom work, you don't need to support that load of the machine. Of course, if you have a big self-propel to do 75 acres, your numbers per ton will increase way more than this.
So do you know what drives like the high end of those prices? What are the factors that they have in common that drive their prices up?
The number one factor is the amount of ton per acre you're getting out.
Okay.
Corn silage is more stable year to year, But haylage, if we go back 2020, in this area there was a lot of leaf hoppers, there was a lot of damaged fields, there was almost no second cut. So if you take all your machinery, divide by the amount of ton you got per year, that 275 was around 330. Now haylage, in this area, we have a bumper crop for the last 2 years, so it helps to drop the average cost of forage. When you have the same equipment, but you have 2-3 tons an acre more, it helps the cost. So those are the costs I've used. The important when you want to do a cost is make sure if you compare two farms, you got the same cost on both sides. And that is tough when there's a management group that they compare numbers. Often they don't use the same number for forages. And that will change big time your calculation. So you got to use the same number for forage. If you want to do the math and change corn silage to 185 and change haylage to 300, my number will change at the bottom as well on both sides, as long as you don't just do it on one side. But yes, it is expensive to produce.
Do you have land costs? Do you have anything for land costs in there?
Yes. So the question is, the land cost will help? Of course it will. If I had to do maybe number 2 reason why the forage cost would change is the equipment. How many dollars is in the shed to produce those tons? Custom work, at least you're not supporting, you know your cost, so it's probably easier to calculate. And the third or fourth one down the list was probably price land. But the price land, do you divide by 10 years or you divide this by 50 years? Like, it makes it tougher. Compared to your machine, a good self-propelled harvester would last, what, 10 years, 15 years? So it adds up. Compared to custom work, it is expensive, but at least you know your cost. But forage cost is expensive. Now, protein and supplement, we do sell feed for a living, and it's not fun lately. There's nothing that is way less than $1,000. It's expensive. But if I do the ratio, the haylage and corn silage is one of the biggest chunk of our feed cost. So we need to add it. Good. Any more questions? Yes?
What is the level for the both ways and protein are the same?
Sorry?
Protein level, for each ratio is not the same, probably because normally 100 grams difference for protein.
Okay, cool. I'm glad somebody noticed it. So in this diet here, I got about the same amount of supplement. So to produce that 25-liter average, we got to feed those cows. And the fact that they are eating, in this example here, almost 6 kilos less of a 20% haylage, I need protein. So protein level on percentage is a touch higher, but I want to support that 25 liters of milk. So this diet, I'm going by memory, was around 17.3, 17.5. This diet was a touch under 17% protein. Those are percentage. Now do the math. 24.5 kilos times 17%. How many kilos of protein does that is? And then 19.7 times 17.5%, how many kilos of protein that is? So of course a percentage will all be a touch higher on a smaller cows. You guys cannot win all the time. Okay? So a smaller diet, you got to make it more concentrate. Cool. Good. You guys are sharp. Any more questions? All right. Okay, so in 2020, I was asked to present on the new DFO. They were coming with a price change, trying to help the system for the jerseys. So I went back to that presentation, and this is a letter that every farmer received. Maybe they did not open the letter, but every farmer received that letter and this example back in January 2020. And here's what it was saying. About only 3% of the farm back in 2017, 2018, in the P5, only 3% of the farm was under 2 as an average of the SNF ratio. Is that right?
No, actually, wasn't an average. If you had one test over 2, it's 3% never had a test over 2. It was not an average.
Okay. So 3% of the farm never had a test over 2 of SNF ratio. Okay, cool. That makes more sense. I thought 3 was pretty low. Okay. And then the farm that it was over 2.2, there was, what's that? That's 58% of the farm was over 2.2. So that was back in 2017, 2018. That was part of the letter to explain the change back then. And those were the price per kilogram of quota. Now, if you check your paycheck, what is it now? 22, 22.50? It was back then a range of $17.82 up to $18, almost $19 per kilograms of quota. Not per hectoliter, per kilogram of quota. And the new policy was to make this range way more tight to avoid farm to push for the other solids and the SNF extra inside their quota. And correct me if I'm wrong, I was not on the DFO meetings. So the range was way more tight starting January 2020. If I take this example of 100 kilos of quota with those price back then, there was a difference of $1.11 per kilo of quota for everything that was under 2.3. So that hosting farm would be 100% in that category. And back then, the hosting farm compared to the Jersey farm would have got $3,300 a month more on their paycheck compared to the Jersey farm. We're what now, 3 years later? The hosting farm went from an extra $3,300 to minus $700. Now you're asking for a penalty on top? I think you're the ones going to receive tomatoes. And I almost did when I was back there. Okay, so I think we've moved enough, personally, as a neutral between Holstein and Jersey. I think we moved enough to push the Holstein and all the breed, and not only Holstein. If I take Ayrshire, if I take other brown Swiss herds, that the ratio is closer to 2.25. I think we've pushed them enough. And it's going to affect, you said, it's going to affect the pocket. The pocket is affected. And Nick, would you agree? So the Jersey farm is now making way more. The Holsteins and the SNF ratio are making less. And the difference is pretty big. And Doug, you heard me said in the past, quota system was not made for Jersey farms back then. I cannot say that anymore. I think we've switched. And what we need to do in everything, same with doing haylage, raising heifers that we talked a few years ago, we need to find our sweet spot. And that what you guys have a big challenge is to make a happy number between the high and the low SNF ratios. Because we still have a fair amount of farm. It would be nice if we update those percentage today. I'd be curious. I think those 58% of the farm, that number must have dropped. And it's going to drop more because the system is pushing us that way. And we cannot blame the farm that was taking advantage of this number. It was there. If the market allows you to do it, let's do it. Okay? Questions? Yes?
But do you see producers that are over 2.1 saying, or over 2.2 saying, how do I change my feed to be less? So that it is happening?
It is happening since January 2020. In 2020, I saw many farms buying extra vegetable fat to try to influence the fat percentage in the milk. And your work is on this. What I said back then, be careful, because now the difference in price is not changing much if you're at 2.25 or if you're at 2.1. So if you're going to spend, a bag of fat is now around $80. If you're spending a bag a day times 30 days to get the same paycheck, it doesn't pay. So don't spend too much money out on those feed guys trying to change the S&F ratio because it won't pay out. Now, with this presentation, I gotta be careful. I'm worried that it start to pencil out to add some ingredient to help to change our S&F ratio. I know that's not what you want to hear. It's just we got to be careful. If we move the line too far away from the sweet spot, that we may find more of it. So the difference today, just to finish on this point, farms is changing their genetics, but that's a slow process. We got to give them time. Feed programs, we do identify better forages quality than before. We're feeding more forages than before. We're feeding less grain than we used to. So all this is already done. We got to give those genetic cows either have room for more jerseys in their herd or give them time to change their ratios. There was a question back then.
In 2020, you noted an increase in the use of vegetable oil or vegetable fats. How many of the farms that you were advising at that time, how many of the farms that you were advising at that time was that use transient until they were able to make, say, different forages or make different breeding decisions? And now we're 2022, so whatever breeding decision that they were making in 2020, they're starting to calve out the results of those breeding decisions. So was that a transient change? And how did it affect the other areas of management in the herds that you advised?
One thing for sure, farmers are understanding better the S&F ratio. They're understanding better how it's affecting their paycheck, and they're doing something about it. Now, 2020 is not that far away, especially for genetics. One thing that is hard for us to understand is this year, I've seen some Holstein herds with the highest fat they ever saw. I got one farm right now, they're producing 1.96 kilos of fat per cow per day. It's done by high volume at 4.4. We never saw that. Now, is that genetics? Is that also the season? We had the highest season to create fat right now. Temperature's not changing that much. Forage are pretty stable in the barn. Everything is there to produce more fat per cow. I'm more worried for summer, when feed change and temperature is affecting those cows, to drop the fat. But if I had to do an average of the farm that I see their paycheck, that number is going up. For example, every Monday morning I always look at all the DFO I have access and I mark their numbers. And I used to see at least half of them be between 3.9 and 4. But like I said, the last 2 months, nobody was on the 4. So it is changing, but it's not changing that quick. Because at the same time we're asking those farms to change their ratio, they also want to make more milk per cow. So we got a volume effect. So it's pretty hard. 40 kilo per cow used to be, oh wow, I don't think we're going to get there. Now we got some herd, if they are under 40, they give us shit. So that number, that bar's been going up as well. So it's hard to have more milk and more fat. So again, those farms, they need to find their sweet spot. So is it maybe 2 liters of milk less with 2% of fat more, 0.2 fat? Yes, it will eventually come. But it's hard to do in 2-3 years. Now, I'm starting to see some Jersey as a percentage coming into the Holsteins. And the Holstein guys, do you have a Jersey cow? No. Why? Sorry, Nick.
I'm not sure this is the room to say it.
Okay. One farm told me, I hate them. Every time we want to do a herd health, that Jersey, stubborn Jersey is always in the way. Imagine if I had 10.
Just give it some pets and it'll hopefully.
Yeah, there you go. But I don't know, in the near future, it's pretty tough to have, especially our parlor or robot are not well made to have different size of animal. There's a company or robot now that the gate will move according to the size of the animal. You can plan this ahead, and that will push the other company to do the same. I said to many farms, I can see in the near future on a 3 robot barn that maybe 2 robot will be Holstein and 1 robot will all be Jerseys as a blend milk in the bulk tank. You guys remind me on when I drive to Farm Lane and I see John Deere parking only. You guys seen that sign before? So don't talk to them about case. Or you go into the yard and they're all red and then I put my John Deere hat and they want to shoot me. But the Jersey is almost like, oh, we got to be 100% Jersey. And the Holstein, oh, we got to be 100% Holstein. Well, maybe the happy medium is a percentage of each. Until we change the genetics of the Holsteins, or high volume of milk. Price of forage is also changing the mentality of having a monster, big 820 kilo cow. It's changing, not only carbon print, but the price to feed that cow and to move her. We were having lunch and you said the Jersey was so friendly to move. They're a smaller animal. They're stubborn, but at least they wait. They are not as heavy. So I see more and more Jersey into farms as a percentage, but it's not always that easy.
Matthew, I just have a comment on the previous slide. The numbers I've seen from dairy farmers of Quebec, that 58 is roughly down to 25% of the producers, but it's only 5 or 6% of the milk that is being produced.
Wow.
So that's on top of my head there, but I think that's the numbers that
So I just want to repeat for the mic, for the camera in the back. You're saying that this 58% now is closer to 25% of the volume of milk produced?
Of the producers?
Of the producers, okay.
Producers, but 5 to 6% of the milk. So they each go over.
Wow.
Right?
So that percentage, if you had to go back just 2 years, it changed a lot.
But that's 2022 compared to 2017, 2018 there.
Yes.
Is it still a 5-year gap?
Yes.
Exactly.
So in conclusion, it's changing. And when it's affecting your pocket, you have no choice to change. Okay. To be fair, because of this message we've received, I did not change the whole presentation because that was done this week.
We did it for you.
Yeah. And that's a comment I often get is, as soon as we understand our paycheck, they change it on us. Yeah, but that's why you have a team to look at those numbers. So I did, for the fun of it, went into the Excel spreadsheet that I have to calculate milk, and it was affecting about another $200 a month. So the penalty is high enough now. That's a message to you. The penalty is high enough now. Okay, good for the questions, I like it. Often when I go to a meeting, I don't remember the presentation, but I remember more the exchange in the room, so feel free to put your comment in here. Now, we've compared Holstein farms to, Holsteins to Jersey, but now let's just stick to Jerseys. I'm a Jersey farm A with the number that we presented to compare. But what's the difference between those two? Which one is making more money now? So we can have a debate. You guys can guess. Message I'm trying to say, if your paycheck would be on the table, I suggest you use your phone and you do the exercise. Don't guess. Do the exercise yourself. It's not that hard. And what about Farm C?
Make more money.
Are you sure?
Raise it close to 2.
Okay, but what about the amount of cows to produce? This is 100 kilos every farm, okay? Okay? So if the revenue is the same for 100 kilos a quota, and it's changing a little bit according to the SNF ratio, what about the amount of cows to produce 100 kilos? Now, I can go on and on and on. My point I want to do is put those paycheck on the table and do the calculation and compare. If your neighbor is doing well, maybe you should check what he's doing. So there's a lot of numbers that could be out there, and there's a lot of consultants in the room or in your area that you can work with to help you to maximize your paycheck. Because at the end, the expenses is also going up. So you got to make sure we keep that margin as best as we can. Any questions? You guys are not tough at all. The hostings guys are way more tougher than you guys. Good. Well, thank you.